Hi, I'm Dearborn City Councilwoman Leslie Herrick. Welcome to this edition of Meet Your Council. Today, I am joined by two of our department directors here at the City of Dearborn. On the right of your screen is Scott Miller, the Director of Assessments, the City Assessor. And then immediately to my left is Ginger Burke Miller. She's the Director of Finance and the City Treasurer. So thank you both for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
We're going to be talking about something that affects almost everybody in Dearborn. The way the property taxes are assessed on your home and where the tax money goes. And it's really complicated, a lot of detail in it, but our two experts are here to kind of boil it down in a nutshell for us in just a few minutes today. So we're going to start by talking about how Dearborn is the tax collection authority for the county. And what that means is that the taxes collected that you pay on your home, if you're a homeowner, some of the money stays here in Dearborn and goes to Dearborn City Services, and some of it goes to the county, and some goes to the Dearborn Public Schools. And actually, the majority of the money does not stay here and pay for things like your trash collection and our parks and our pools and especially our public safety. Most of the money that you pay does go to the county and to the schools. But here to give us a little bit more detail about how the money is divided up and to talk about what is a mill on your house, because that's the number that you pay for the property taxes based on the value of your house. So Ginger, can you kind of talk about what is a mill and where does that money go?
So 1 mill is when you take the taxable value of your home and divide it by 1,000, and then you multiply it times a mill. The mill is the rate that the city and other municipalities charge. That's their way of gaining revenue for their services that they provide to you. We're looking at the first graph, which is called Where Taxes Collected Go. And the city portion is the two sections that are in green. There's city services, which is 33.6%. And then there's city sewer system voted debt, CSO, which is 7%. And then we have Wayne County Community College, 4.9%. Detroit Institute of Arts Authority, 0.3%. Henry Ford Community College, 6.1%. Wayne County is 20.2%. Wayne County Transit Authority, 1.5%. Huron Clinton Metro Authority, 0.3%. Dearborn Schools and the state education tax makes up 25.9%, and the Zoo Authority is 0.2%. The next chart is how city service taxes are used. So on the first pie chart, there were two green shaded areas, the largest one being city services. The second chart breaks down how those city services are split up and how we use that here at the city. So public safety, 61% goes to police and fire. Then next we have recreation and culture is 13%. Public works is 12%. General government is 11%. Debt service, that's paying any bonds, any loans that we've taken out. And then community improvement is 1%.
By law, we're only allowed to collect so many mills as a city, and we're actually collecting less than we need to by law. In case there's an emergency, we can authorize an additional tax millage. Right now, how much are we collecting?
We're collecting 15, but then we have a 3.5 mills supplemental that is expiring this year.
Okay, so totally, right now, taxpayers are paying 18.5 mills that stay here in Dearborn. And then in total, if you add what they're paying towards the zoo and the parks and the other things, the schools that we talked about, in total, they're paying about 62 mills? Is
It's
that right?
roughly that. We have not gotten the amounts that those municipalities or authorities' boards have approved yet. We usually get those in June, about the same time that city council is passing the millages that we're going to be levying for the city portion. So that's when we start collecting those in from all of those other authorities, and then we put those on the tax bills.
So in general, it's been about 62 mills for the past few years, and it
Roughly.
won't change significantly this year.
Correct.
So let's go back for a second and talk about how are your property taxes determined? And you hear the word millage and a mill rate. So what is a mill? How much is a mill? And how is that determined on the house that you own? And also, if somebody down the street owns a house that looks very much like yours, why might they be paying a completely different total dollars in taxes than you are? But we know that they're still paying the same mill rate. Scott, can you tell us about that?
Sure. So assessments are getting more and more complicated, and hopefully I can shed some light on this. Prior to Prop 8, and I'll try to make this real quick, prior to 1984, assessments were pretty straightforward. It was just your assessed value times your millage rate, and it was real simple. Proposal A changed that by creating two new terms, cap value and taxable value. So the cap value is a formula, which is to basically limit the amount of people who are going to pay in taxes to either 5% or CPI, whichever is less. The CPI is your consumer price index, basically considered your rate of inflation. So in an appreciating market, like we've had for the most part in Michigan, where you see 4, 5, 6, 7, we've even seen 8, 9, 10% increases, your cap value is only going to go up, say, the rate of inflation, right? 2, 3%. What happens in general is you get a widening gap between taxable value and assessed value. And the difference is this. Assessed is always chasing the market. That is always supposed to be at 50% of market value. So a house worth $200,000 should have an SUV of 100, right? 100,000. Pretty straightforward. Taxable value is anything but straightforward. Unfortunately, there's several variables in there. Uncapping is probably the most common one. So if you consider two properties right next to each other that have the exact same assessed value, exact same market value, and someone's been in that house for quite some time, right? So their SEV is chasing the market, bumping up considerably, 5, 6, 7% every year. And the taxable is being held back at the rate of inflation. So you get a pretty significant gap on both of these properties on their taxable value and your SEV. And remember, guys, the taxable value is what we pay taxes on. It is taxable value times your mill rate, okay? So in the event that there is a transfer of ownership, someone comes and buys a house. The very next year, that property gets what is called uncapped. And that's a phrase that we throw around a lot in assessing. And what does that mean? That means that your taxable value comes equal to your SEV the following year. So if there's a big gap, there's a 40% gap, which we did a study last year for the last 3 years and found about 5% of the properties in Dearborn were transferring, were being uncapped the last 3 years. So it was almost 5% every year. And the average increase from the taxable to the SEV on average was 42%.
So that happens.
Pretty significant.
Just to put it in perspective of somebody who's buying a home,
Yes.
you know, and they're buying from somebody who's owned the home for many, many years.
Yes.
And so it's really not accurate to look at what that previous owner was paying in taxes, because your value is going to be
Exactly.
reset when it's uncapped.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
So they're going to be paying at the actual value of the house rather than what
Yeah.
the previous owner was paying, where it was capped a little bit lower
Yep.
because of Prop A.
So if anyone wants to do a quick rule of thumb on how to estimate your taxes when you're going to buy a house, don't look at the taxable value or the taxes of what that current owner is paying. Look at the SEV. Take the SEV, and if you really want to dig in a little bit more, just look and see if the SEV, if that market's been basically appreciating, right? So if you say your current SEV is at 100,000, and I've been seeing 5% every year, next year maybe I add on another 5%, right? So now it's at 105,000. I take that number times my mill rate, and I'm going to be a lot closer in estimating my taxes than I ever am by using anyone's taxable value. Use your SEV. Don't use taxable, and don't use current taxes. It's the best way to gauge what your tax levy will be. It
And of
does-
course, it's not just Dearborn, it's going to happen anywhere you live.
This is statewide. If I may, just add a couple things. We are working on some small, concise, kind of informational packets, and we're going to put them in the assessing department. We're working with other departments, like Treasury Department and other departments, and just to try to get this information out to our taxpayers so they can be informed, so they're not surprised when they get the tax bill that goes from last year, the previous one was paying $4,000, how come I'm paying $6,000, And we're just trying to inform the taxpayers. So this year, we've got half a dozen things that we've already been working on. We're just fine tuning them, and we are trying to get them into several different languages as well, so we can meet, as many of our taxpayers' needs as possible. So we're trying. We're going to improve and basically more of a transparency and greater informational
Well, I
approach to our
appreciate
neighbors.
that several of our departments are really focusing on that right now,
Yes.
increasing communication with the
Yes.
public, and just so folks understand where to go to get the answers that they need when they're trying to get business done with the city, and to understand the processes that we follow here. So I appreciate the work that you're doing to present that information, and knowing that you're
Thank you.
always available to answer the public's
Thank you.
questions. One last note that I wanted to say is right now we're at the early part of April, and this is budget season for the city council and for the city. So all of our departments have been working hard to present their budget, give it to the mayor, who presents it to the council for review. And the public is welcome to attend all of our meetings, all the city council meetings, all of our study sessions, all of our budget sessions. And right now, being on Zoom, at least for the time being, makes it even easier to access that information from your home. So please feel free to join us on Zoom, and if we resume in person, you're welcome to come and watch our discussions about these, how your tax dollars are being used as we set the budget for the coming year. We welcome the public to watch, and feel free to reach out to us, myself on council or any of the other council members, if you have any questions or suggestions for us, because we certainly want to have your viewpoints as a public, that we can take that into consideration as we all make these decisions. Our department heads are working really hard to serve you and everybody working at the City of Dearborn every day, and the dollars that they have to provide those services are so critical, so we appreciate public input on that as well. So thank you, Scott and Ginger, for joining us for this edition of Meet Your Council, and we look forward to seeing you next time.